In the frozen silence of medieval Japan, where snow buried rooftops and the wind sang through cedar walls, warmth came not from fire, but from fermentation. Inside small wooden kitchens, clay jars whispered with life. Cooked rice, water, and invisible time worked together in the dark, birthing a liquid both sour and sacred, rice vinegar. No machines, no heat, only patience, breath, and snow. This is the art of vinegar brewing, where winter itself becomes a living ingredient. Winter in northern medieval Japan was not merely a season, it was a test of endurance. The snow fell endlessly, blanketing roofs, silencing footsteps, and turning the entire landscape into a muted sea of white. Fields slept, rivers froze, and yet, within the quiet of this desolation, the people found a different rhythm of life, one that belonged not to the plough, but to fermentation. In small villages tucked among mountains, smoke rose gently from wooden houses. Inside, the air was warm with the scent of cooked rice and aging grain. The villagers called it the season of gentle sourness, a time when invisible life continued to thrive despite the frost. It was in this silence that the art of brewing, soy sauce, sake, miso, and rice vinegar, became the heartbeat of winter. Men and women worked slowly, deliberately, tending to the jars as if caring for sleeping children. They whispered to the fermenting grains, believing that sound could disturb the spirit of the brew. Every gesture was patient, every moment filled with reverence. For them, fermentation was not just chemistry, it was coexistence. Even when the land froze, the living world never stopped breathing. And so, in the heart of winter, a quiet miracle unfolded. Snow outside, life inside. Everything began with rice, the soul of Japanese sustenance and the foundation of every flavor. The rice chosen for vinegar brewing was Uruchi Mai, short grain and glutinous, prized for its high starch and soft texture. Farmers grew it through the humid summer months, and when harvested each grain was treated as a gift of the gods. To make vinegar, the rice had to be perfect. It was steamed, never boiled, allowing moisture to enter slowly and evenly. Once cooked, it was spread across bamboo trays to cool, the steam rising like ghostly breath into the winter air. Too dry, and fermentation would fail. Too wet, and the grains would suffocate. Each grain of rice became a miniature universe, a home for unseen organisms that would, over time, transform simple starch into sweet liquid. This was where patience began. The brewer's hands were steady and warm, gently separating the rice to prevent clumping. In this simple act, centuries of inherited wisdom lived on. They knew that rice was alive. Even after harvest, it responded to temperature, to touch, to care. To rush was to ruin it. To wait was to honor it. In these quiet kitchens, the foundation of vinegar was not just made, it was nurtured. If rice was the body, then koji was its soul. The Japanese called it a living spirit, a mold that could turn grain into sweetness and sweetness into life. The species Aspergillus oryzae had been cultivated since ancient times, revered as a divine helper in every brewery and temple kitchen. Without it, there could be no sake, no miso, no soy sauce, and certainly no vinegar. The process began when freshly cooled rice was dusted with fine spores of koji. It was then transferred to a warm wooden chamber, its temperature carefully held around 30 degrees Celsius. The room smelled of steamed rice and faint honey, an aroma so gentle that it seemed to breathe. Within hours, a white fuzz began to cover the grains like morning frost. For the next 3 days, the rice was turned by hand, wrapped in cloth at night to preserve warmth. The brewer watched closely not as a scientist but as a guardian of balance. Too hot and the koji would die. Too cold and it would sleep. By the 4th day the rice gleamed with sweetness. Starch had become sugar. In the soft glow of candlelight the brewer smiled. The transformation had begun. What once was food was now potential. A promise of something greater. Once the rice had become sweet with koji, it was ready to awaken into alcohol. The brewer mixed it with water and a gentle strain of yeast known as komekobo. The mixture was stirred slowly with a wooden paddle, the sound echoing softly through the wooden beams of the house. Fermentation took place in earthen jars, their mouths covered with cloth, their bellies warmed by the faint glow of charcoal fires. The air inside smelled faintly of sake, sweet, sharp and alive. This was the birth of Amazark, a light rice wine that would soon evolve into vinegar. Every morning the brewer listened to the bubbling sound, proof that the yeast was breathing. The temperature of the room had to remain stable, even in the coldest nights. Thick earthen walls and paper screens helped retain the delicate warmth, turning the entire house into a womb of fermentation. In time, the clear liquid rose to the top, smooth, fragrant, full of promise. The brewer didn't rush. They knew that once the yeast had done its part, another transformation awaited, one that could not be forced, only guided by nature herself. When the rice wine reached its peak, the brewer stopped stirring. The yeast had completed its work, and now air would take over. The jars were uncovered and placed near the cool winter light. No additives, no chemicals, just the quiet invitation of nature. In the cold air drifted acetic acid bacteria, invisible but ever present, carried by dust, breath, and wooden beams blackened by smoke. As they entered the jar, a new transformation began. Alcohol turning slowly into acid, sweetness dissolving into sharpness. For weeks nothing seemed to change. The surface formed a thin film known as the mother of vinegar, soft and translucent like silk. Beneath it the liquid thickened slightly, its scent deepening from fruity to tangy, from warm to clean. It was as if the liquid learned to breathe differently, no longer intoxicating, but awakening. The brewers never hurried this stage. They treated the jars like living beings, keeping them warm with straw wraps and checking their progress by smell rather than sight. One old saying went, "We don't make vinegar, we help it be born." When the brew finally tasted both sour and soft, when the scent filled the room like the memory of spring rain, the brewers bowed before the jars. The miracle was complete. Rice had become vinegar, a living circle of transformation. Snow, to most people, meant hardship, but to the vinegar brewers of medieval Japan it was a quiet ally. The cold didn't kill the microbes, and it disciplined them. At a steady temperature between 5 and 10 degrees Celsius, fermentation slowed, deepened, and refined itself. The result was a vinegar that was mild, clear, and beautifully balanced. The stillness of winter was crucial. With fewer insects and less contamination, the acetic bacteria could grow in peace. The melted snow outside provided humidity that seeped naturally into the walls and wooden beams, keeping the air moist but clean, an ideal environment for the slow work of transformation. Villages known for vinegar often sat near mountain springs, where both water and air were exceptionally pure. Locals said the snow listened to the vinegar, keeping it calm. They believed nature responded to patience. In this balance between frost and fire, between stillness and breath, a philosophy was born. Perfection does not come from force, but from harmony. Thus, in the heart of a frozen landscape, something alive continued to thrive. Proof that even winter could be a season of creation. When the time finally came to open the jars, the room filled with an aroma unlike anything else. It was not sharp like modern vinegar, but layered, soft, earthy, and slightly sweet, like wood soaked in sunlight. The surface shimmered faintly, revealing a golden hue that resembled melted candlelight. Old brewers said that colour told a story. A pale yellow meant youth, vinegar born of recent snow. A deeper amber hinted at age and patience, a product of seasons spent in quiet darkness. To them, each drop carried memory, of rice fields, of cold nights, of hands that stirred and waited. Tasting the vinegar was almost ceremonial. A single sip danced between sourness and warmth, first biting, then soothing. It left behind not just flavour, but feeling, a gentle echo on the tongue. It was said that good vinegar did not shock the senses, it invited reflection. When the lid of a centuries-old jar was opened, even the air seemed to pause. The aroma rose like mist over snow, a reminder that beauty could grow in silence. In that moment, the brewer wasn't merely tasting vinegar, they were tasting time itself, captured, fermented, and preserved in liquid form. To medieval Japanese villagers, rice vinegar was more than a condiment. It was life preserved in a bottle. Its uses crossed the boundary between kitchen and medicine. Housewives mixed it into rice for sushi meshi, or brushed it onto freshly caught fish to prevent decay. Farmers added a few drops to their vegetables to make pickles that lasted through the winter months. But beyond flavour, vinegar was believed to restore balance to the body. Monks recommended it for cleansing the throat and warding off fevers. Mothers diluted it with warm water to wash wounds, or used it to clean their children's hands after chores. Even travelling merchants carried small flasks of vinegar, drinking it with water to fight exhaustion. During cold winters, when sickness often spread, a little rice vinegar in soup was said to wake the blood. It refreshed the weary, sharpened the senses, and reminded the body to keep living. In a time before hospitals, vinegar was the medicine of the people. Humble, homemade, and born from patience. It was proof that survival was not only about endurance but about wisdom, knowing how to turn even decay into healing. Every village that brewed vinegar guarded a sacred secret, the mother vinegar, or komisu. It was the living root of all future batches, a gelatinous veil of bacteria and yeast passed down through generations. Families treated it not as an ingredient, but as an ancestor. Inside dark cellars, one jar was never empty completely. A small amount of the living mother always remained, ready to breathe life into the next brew. This thread of continuity could stretch over hundreds of years, its microbes tracing an unbroken lineage of taste and care. Brewers whispered that the mother recognized those who treated it kindly. Never let her starve, never let her freeze, they said. To forget her was to lose the soul of the village. Even during wars and famines, some families risked their lives to hide their mother vinegar from destruction, burying jars beneath the snow or under temple floors. These living cultures became a metaphor for human resilience. Just as vinegar survived by transformation, so did the people who nurtured it. The mother vinegar wasn't merely alive, it remembered. And through her, the wisdom of centuries fermented quietly, waiting for each new pair of hands to carry it forward. In the frozen stillness of medieval Japan, the art of vinegar brewing became a silent hymn to life itself. From rice, water, and time, villagers learned that warmth could be cultivated without fire, that patience could turn decay into renewal. Snow didn't stop them, it taught them. It slowed their world until they could see that creation was not about speed, but surrender. The rice gave sweetness, the yeast gave breath, the cold gave clarity. Together they composed a symphony of transformation, the sourness of life made sacred. Each jar was a small universe, where human intention met natural rhythm. It was not domination over nature, but harmony with it. The brewer didn't command the vinegar to form. They waited beside it, breathing with it, learning from it. And when spring finally came, they would pour the golden liquid into bottles, holding the memory of winter in their hands. A single drop on the tongue carried the message their ancestors left behind, that life, like vinegar, is born from stillness, and that even in the coldest silence something beautiful continues to grow.